In 1910, Japan annexes Korea after 3 years of fighting. In result of this, Japan gains much power and becomes one of the world's largest powers. The early 20th century was a rough and turbulent time in Japan, varying from the highest power available along with wealth to the poverty and devastation of living conditions through the country. In 1920, Japan is plunged into a deep economic crisis. Stress of unemployment, rapidly expanding population, and rapid urban growth were all roots of many of the problems Japan were facing. The 1940s and the 1950s was another hard time in Japan as it surrendered in World War II in 1945. At this time, Allied forces that were led by the United States occupied much of Japan that brought about many drastic changes to the nation, and the people of Japan were not in favor of these changes. With the damage that was brought about with World War II, many years of rebuilding was required for the nation.
This event occurred after World War II in Japan in the Toyama Prefecture. The water from the Jinzu River Basin, which runs from the central mountains of Japan to the Sea of Japan, is the water that was contaminated. In 1874, the Minzu Corporation took over the mine called the Kamioka Mine. The main work of this factory was mining zinc. The contamination from this factory was dumped into the Jinzu River and then further ran off into the paddies where the rice was grown in the Toyama Prefecture. People used the water from this river for everyday activities such as drinking water, washing clothes, and other leisure activities. 24,000 Japanese lived along the stream of the Jinzu River. Everyone that was located along the river were at risk for this disease because they were ingesting the water. Individuals of this community were exposed for years on end to the cadmium. Itai disease commonly attacks women who have had several children. Known health effects from this toxicant is shoulder and knee joint aching and extreme pains in the lower back. As the Itai disease progresses, the bones break and become soft due to any movement. The disease Itai translates to ouch ouch because of how severe the pain is.
Hi, I'm Abby. I'll be interviewing Aki today, and I'm going to be asking her a couple questions about her experience in the disaster. Where exactly did you live?
I lived in a small house right near the Jinzu River, and it was very convenient to live there because I had really easy access to the water.
Where did you get your water from?
I got all of my water from the river itself since it was so close to my house, and living there allowed me to use the water for drinking, for cooking with, for washing dishes and doing laundry, and even for bathing in.
What symptoms did you feel at the onset of your disease?
The first thing I noticed was that my bones began to get very brittle. They started breaking upon impact that would not normally break a bone at all. So that was the first thing I noticed, and it was very obvious. Also, renal injury was another really noticeable symptom right off the bat.
How did your symptoms progressively get worse?
As time went on, my renal injuries developed into urinary and kidney damage, which manifested into a lot more pain. Also, my already brittle bones got even weaker, so more bones began to break. I started to lose my height and shrink because of my spine developing deformities. Then after that, my long bones began to develop deformities as well, which is my arms and my legs. So that made it super painful to walk. Time has only made it worse and caused more pain all over my whole body, in my bones and in my organs.
The kidney is the main organ affected by chronic cadmium exposure and toxicity. Cadmium accumulation occurs in various tissues and organs, with the most extensive accumulation occurring in the kidney cortex. Bone damage seen in Japanese Itai disease patients was the result of cadmium toxicity in combination with nutrition deficiencies, notably of zinc and calcium. Cadmium is classified as a cancer-causing agent in humans. Lung, pancreas, breast, endometrium, prostate, and urinary/bladder are all significant relations to mass cadmium exposure. It has been found that mass cadmium exposure in an environmental setting has been found to be linked to diabetes, hypertension, peripheral artery disease, and diminished lung function.
Hi, I am Faith, and I will be interviewing Dr. Donahue, a researcher from Tulane University. He is currently conducting research on Itai disease and mass cadmium poisoning in the Toyama Prefecture.
Thank you for having me, Faith.
My pleasure. What exactly was the contaminant in the water that caused the disease?
So in this specific case, it was the cadmium that was causing these health effects, but it comes from slag, which is in the river. It's actually from a mine that was upstream, and normally it's silicon dioxide, but in this specific scenario, it was from the waste material being removed from the cadmium, which leaked into several irrigation systems and infected the crops as well.
Okay, and what are the lifelong health effects that people will suffer from?
So population-wide, there's several adverse health effects. Some of these are increased levels of diabetes, hypertension, artery diseases, myocardial infarctions, which is a heart attack, and several other. These are one of the worst contaminants that can be ingested through a human through a water source.
Okay, and thank you for sharing your research with us today.
Thank you for having me, Faith.
Thank you.
Initially, Japan designed 5 groups, each with a specific task in order to control the plants and ensure that proper techniques were being followed. As of 1999, the Itai disease caused by mass cadmium poisoning was one of the largest pollution-related lawsuits in Japan following World War II. Today, the most common source of cadmium and cadmium poisoning is ingestion through food. There are also traces of cadmium in cigarettes, which is another current source of exposure. While cadmium is no longer a very common exposure, Itai disease impacts our society, as it demonstrated that there are many potential hazards out in the community due to mass production of dangerous heavy metals. The mass cadmium poisoning in the Japan Prefecture was being cleaned up until 2012, when the river cleaning was complete.
Hello, it's Faith, and I am back here again in the Toyama Prefecture. It has been 5 years since the massive cadmium poisoning outbreak. I am interviewing Ayoko, who is a resident who lives near the Jinzu River. We are interviewing her to see the current state of the prefecture and improvements that have been made environmentally.
Thank you for having me today.
My pleasure. So, besides the negative health effects, what other negative outcomes has the community experienced?
We've experienced many other negative outcomes. Since the fish live in the water and the water has been affected by cadmium and other such toxins, the population of fish has severely depleted, which affects our diet since it's a large part of our diet. In addition, rice is also part of our diet, and the water that was used to grow the rice ended up damaging the rice crops, leading to.
And are individuals of your community still suffering from the exposures today? And if so, how?
Yeah, so unfortunately, Itai disease is a very slow-acting disease in individuals. So individuals that have this disease don't experience the full symptoms until later on in the disease. They suffer extreme pain before meeting their eventual death. Also, children who are born to individuals of Itai disease, they suffer many other negative health consequences, such as bone weakness and other such blood diseases. Also, the farmers can't produce as much as food as I mentioned before, which affects the amount of food that is available for the population in the community right now.
Wow, that is really awful. So given this, what legal action or government interventions are you hoping to see to help the victims?
Currently, it seems to me that the Japanese government hasn't had that much intervention in our community. So I'm hoping to see more policy change and more intervention in the coming years, such as the river cleanup. It's really unfortunate because the victims of this disease are just innocent people that were using the water for their everyday use, such as drinking the water and using it for washing in their life. So they weren't aware of any of the toxins in their water.
Wow, Ayoko. I truly want to thank you for being here with me today, and I want to thank you for all the information you give, and hopefully our documentary can bring to the surface some interventions for you.
Thank you.